Alright, everyone, tonight we're setting sail into a grittier world, one filled with salty seas, fierce battles, and harsh survival. Forget the romantic tales of treasure and glory you've heard before. The reality? You'd struggle to last even a single sunrise aboard a pirate ship. So before we dive deep, take a second to hit like and subscribe. Only if you genuinely vibe with what I'm sharing here. Drop a comment too, telling me where you're watching from and what hour it is in your corner of the world. It's always wild to connect across the globe. Now settle in, maybe grab a blanket or a cool drink, and let's drift into tonight's adventure together. You wake up to the sound of creaking wood and something scurrying across your chest. You pray it's a mouse. But based on the weight, and the way it pauses to lick itself, it's probably not. The air smells like salt, mildew, and regret. Your head is pounding, your mouth tastes like someone poured seawater into an old boot and left it in the sun, and your bed is a hammock that seems personally offended by the concept of comfort. It sways with every tilt of the ship, gently threatening to roll you out and onto the splintered deck below. You shift slightly and immediately regret it. Your back has locked into the shape of a question mark. The ropes of the hammock have etched a neat little pattern into your skin, like a sailor's brand you didn't ask for. There's no pillow, just your own bicep, which has gone numb sometime during the night. Your blanket? That would be your own damp shirt, clinging to your torso like it knows a storm is coming and wants to drown with you. It's still dark outside, but the bell is ringing. Not the pleasant chime of a morning alarm, but the sharp clang of metal on metal, telling you to wake up or get shouted at by a man named Craigjaw who once bit someone for sneezing too loudly. You don't have a room. No door to close, no privacy to protect. You're crammed below deck with 12 other men who all snore like livestock being slowly strangled. One of them has developed a cough that sounds like it's trying to escape his body entirely. Another sleeps with a knife under his tongue, just in case. You learn that the hard way. The floor is slick. You don't ask with what. You swing your legs over the edge of the hammock and instantly regret that too. The boards are cold and wet, and your feet, bare, blistered, and unwashed, meet them with a kind of quiet protest that feels spiritual. You stand up and immediately have to crouch, because the ceiling is low and your skull still remembers the last time you forgot that. No one says good morning. They just grunt, spit, and shuffle toward the ladder like zombies headed for the first meal of the day. You're not sure what that meal will be, but judging by the smell wafting down from the galley, something died during the cooking process. Maybe during the growing process too. You climb the ladder to the deck, blinking into the pale morning light. The sea stretches out in every direction, cold, gray, endless. The wind hits you in the face like a wet slap, and your clothes cling tighter. You think salt water might dry after a while. It doesn't. It just soaks in, until every fiber of your being is vaguely crusted. The sky is a muted sheet of clouds. No sun, just a thin, sickly light that makes everything look a little worse. The sails flap like angry ghosts above you, and already the boatswain is barking orders in a voice that sounds like gravel being chewed. You have no idea what you're doing. None of this is familiar. There's no Google, no tutorial, no kindly guide to explain the rigging. Just ropes, knots, yelling, and your own vague instinct not to die. Someone hands you a bucket. They don't say what it's for. You don't ask. Welcome to the pirate life. You've been awake for 6 minutes and your socks, if you had socks, would already be wet. And this, unfortunately, is the easy part. They don't shake your hand. Pirates don't do that. Introductions, if they happen at all, are more like warnings. A nod, a grunt, sometimes a long stare that tells you where you fall in the food chain. You are not high on that list. You might not even be on it. The first man you meet is named Spitch. You ask if that's short for something. He says no. It's just the sound it makes when he hocks into a bucket. He laughs. You try to laugh. It comes out wrong. He keeps staring. He's got 3 teeth, all in different shades of yellow, and a tattoo of a mermaid across his throat that looks like it was done with a knife and some coal. Her face is upside down, possibly on purpose. The next crew member introduces himself by sneezing directly onto your shoulder. No apology. Just a wet sniff and a scratch of something that should probably be examined by a doctor, if doctors were a thing here. You catch his name eventually, Turnip Jack. Not because he likes turnips. Because, apparently, he smells like one. You'll come to understand that later. Much later. Once the breeze dies and the scent settles around you like a warm fog. Then there's Molly No-Nose, who, to be clear, is not a woman. Molly is built like a stack of barrels and seems to enjoy sharpening things for no reason. You don't ask about the name. You don't ask about the nose. You don't ask anything, because Molly has a way of looking at people like he's deciding whether or not to eat them. Crab, the ship's cook, wears a single sock on his hand and refers to it as chef. He doesn't talk much otherwise. Just hums sea shanties and occasionally giggles when stirring the pot, which smells like death boiled down to its basic elements. You will be asked to eat it. Eventually. You think someone might be normal. James, clean shirt, clear eyes, actual sentences. Then you see him trying to teach a rat to fetch a coin. You don't interrupt. He seems busy. Everyone smells. It's not an insult, just a fact. The ship carries a cocktail of odors that shift with the wind: rotting wood, dried sweat, fish oil, something sour that might have once been citrus, and whatever's brewing in the lower deck barrels. No one wears shoes that fit. No one wears shoes that match. You've seen at least 2 men trade boots mid-argument, mid-fight. You're starting to think foot ownership is a temporary condition. Hygiene is theoretical. Teeth are optional. Fingernails are weapons. Bathing happens when someone falls overboard, and even then, it's discouraged. Salt water makes the scabs peel too early. They drink before breakfast. Rum mostly. Sometimes grog, which is just rum's sad cousin, watered down, occasionally flavored with lime if someone's feeling fancy, which they rarely are. You ask for water once. The look you receive is the kind normally reserved for traitors or sea monsters. The captain? You haven't met him yet. You've heard him. His voice carries from the stern cabin like thunder in a bottle. He shouts in multiple languages, sometimes inventing new ones just to get his point across. You assume he's either asleep, dead, or busy writing your name on a list somewhere. Nobody smiles. Not really. Smiling is too risky. It reveals teeth, and teeth are targets. You learn to keep your mouth shut. You learn to walk softly. You learn to never turn your back to a man tying a rope, especially if he whistles while doing it. These people have lived at sea too long. They don't think in weeks or months. They think in tides and scars and bottles emptied. Every creak of the hull is just another reminder that land is a memory. You are not in your world anymore. You are in theirs. And they're watching you. Testing you. Waiting to see if you'll last long enough to deserve a nickname. You probably won't. You might think breakfast is the easy part. You'd be wrong. Dead wrong. On a pirate ship, breakfast is a test of will, a trial by flavor, or lack thereof. The galley smells like something died in a pot 3 days ago, and nobody's bothered to check if it was still breathing before adding salt and fire. The cook, Crab, is already stirring his latest creation, humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like a curse. They call the staple hardtack. If you've never met hardtack, imagine a biscuit that was left on a ship's deck during a hurricane, then dried out in the sun, then forgotten under a pile of seaweed for a month. Now add the texture of concrete. Now imagine biting into it without any teeth left. That's your breakfast. You take a piece. It's heavy, crumbly, and somehow still tough. You crunch down carefully, aware that the ship's doctor will charge extra if you break a tooth. The taste is nothing. No sugar, no salt, no flavor, just a vague chalkiness that lingers like a bad dream. Next up is the salted meat. It's the kind of meat that fights back, if you give it half a chance. Tough enough to have survived multiple sea storms and at least one mutiny. You chew. You regret. You chew again. It tastes like old leather soaked in brine, and not the kind that makes pickles delicious. You glance sideways at the others. They're chewing with the practiced patience of men who've eaten this same meal for years and have grown used to the taste of disappointment. Then there's the broth. A steaming, suspiciously murky liquid sloshing in a bowl, usually made from fish heads, seaweed, and whatever else floated by that morning. The smell hits your nostrils before the bowl even reaches your hands. It's a mix of rotten sea and something alive and angry. You take a cautious sip. Your stomach convulses but refuses to revolt. Somewhere near the edge of the deck, a rat sneaks by, dragging a tiny piece of hardtack between its teeth. You watch it with envy. It looks better fed than you feel. If you're lucky, there might be a scrap of cheese, which is usually hard enough to be used as a weapon. If you're very lucky, the ship's carpenter will toss you a dried fruit. If you're not, you'll get a handful of sawdust mixed in with your rations, which is apparently a filler, and not just dirt. No one bothers with utensils. There aren't any. You learn quickly to eat with your fingers, which isn't a problem until you realize how grimy those fingers are, and how long it's been since you washed them. Between bites, the crew spits curses and old jokes. None of them are funny. You don't laugh. Rum flows freely, though. It's the only thing keeping most of the men from collapsing into despair. Some take a swig before the meal, some during, and a few drown their food in it. You think that might be the secret ingredient, liquid courage to swallow the ship's version of breakfast without gagging. You wonder briefly if you could live on this diet. Your stomach answers with a growl that sounds suspiciously like a death rattle. Breakfast here isn't just a meal. It's a warning. If you survive this, maybe you'll make it through the day. If not, well, the sea is vast, and it's hungry. Welcome to your new reality. You're not a swashbuckler or a dashing hero. At least, not yet. For now, your job is simpler and much less glamorous. You're the swabber. That's pirate talk for deck cleaner, floor scrubber, and general misery manager. If you thought waking up was rough, wait until you meet the deck. It's a slick, uneven surface that's never really dry and never really clean. It's covered in seawater, fish guts, sweat, blood, from someone's bad temper last night, and something dark and sticky you try not to think about. You don't have shoes that grip. You don't have gloves that protect. You have 2 bare hands and a mop that might have been borrowed from a dungeon. The first task? Swabbing the deck. It sounds simple. It isn't. You grab the mop, which feels heavier than it should, like it's soaked in everything that's ever gone wrong on this ship. You push it forward. The wood beneath your feet is slick, and your hands already sting from the cold salt water. Your muscles scream in protest, and your back isn't much happier about bending over for hours on end. The deck isn't just dirty. It's alive. Little creatures, tiny crabs, sea bugs, and God knows what else, scurry between the planks. Some are curious. Most want to bite. Your skin is already covered in small scratches, and every movement feels like a negotiation with pain. You try to ignore the smell. It's a mix of old fish, rotting wood, sweat, and something sweet that's definitely not natural. You're not sure if it's the ship itself or the leftover grog spilled during last night's fight. Either way, it's permanent. You're breathing it in with every gulp of salty air. Every now and then, a wave hits the side, splashing cold seawater over the rail and onto the deck. Your mop becomes heavier, and your hands numb. You wonder briefly if the ship has a plan for drying anything out, or if it just expects you to keep cleaning forever. Spoiler, it's the latter. You're not just swabbing. You're bailing water from the lower deck too, with a bucket that leaks faster than you can fill it. The bilge, the nasty, foul-smelling water that collects at the bottom of the ship, is your constant companion. You don't ask what's in it. You don't want to know. It's enough to say that once it touches your skin, you feel a layer of grime settle into your bones. And then there's the rigging. If the ropes don't cut your hands, the constant climbing will shred your nails and blister your palms. You learn quickly that knots are either your best friends or worst enemies. You never know which until you're halfway up a mast, hanging by your fingertips and praying that someone else knows what they're doing. Your clothes? Always damp. Always salty. You stop caring about how they smell. You stop caring about much of anything except staying upright and not getting yelled at. You're exhausted before the sun fully rises, and the day has barely begun. But the deck waits. The ropes won't untangle themselves. The sails won't adjust without hands willing to climb and tie and fight against the wind. You have a job, and the sea doesn't care if you hate it. You mop. You bail. You climb. You curse silently and hope to survive long enough for a break. Pirate life is work. And work is pain. And you're just getting started. You might think a pirate ship is a lawless free-for-all, swords swinging, rum flowing, chaos reigning. In a way it is. But if you want to last more than a day, you'll learn quickly. There are rules. And breaking them? Well, that usually means trouble. The first rule is simple: obey the chain of command. The captain's word is law. If he says you're to swab the deck till your hands bleed, you do it. No questions. No whining. No bargaining. If you think about disobeying, remind yourself what happened to the last man who did. He's now a cautionary tale, and not in a good way. Then there's the rule about loyalty. You stick with the crew. No sneaking off. No trying to signal a Navy ship. No talking to that nice merchant who might be passing by. Pirates trust very few, and betrayal is a death sentence, usually immediate, sometimes creative. Loyalty isn't just expected. It's demanded, enforced by glances sharp enough to cut. Another unspoken rule: don't get in the captain's way. He's got his plans, and they don't include you. Trying to second-guess him or act like you know better will get you a bruised ego, or worse, a bruised face. Better to stay quiet, nod, and hope to live through the day. Then there's the rule about rum. drink it when offered. Not because you want to, but because refusing it might be taken as weakness. And weakness on a pirate ship is a liability. If you drink too much and stumble around, you'll still be tolerated, but only until you become a burden. Then you'll find yourself with more enemies than friends. The rules around personal space are non-existent. You share cramped quarters with strangers who sweat, snore, and occasionally snatch your blanket. Privacy is a luxury of landlubbers. If you try to claim a corner or hide from the crew, you'll get a lesson in sharing that involves a sharpened blade or a not-so-gentle shove. Cleanliness? Forget it. You'll be expected to wash yourself in seawater, which is less refreshing and more like rubbing salt into every cut and scrape. If you complain, you'll be labeled a weakling. You'll learn about the code, the list of rules that governs pirates' behavior. But don't expect it to be fair or kind. The code says you get a share of the loot, but only if you survive the next raid. It says you can't steal from your mates, but it doesn't say much about borrowing without asking. It says disputes get settled with duels, but you're probably not going to win. You'll break the rules, of course. Everyone does. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident. Maybe you'll be too slow with the sails. Maybe you'll forget to tie a knot properly. Maybe you'll ask a question that nobody wants answered. Breaking rules isn't always punished right away. Sometimes it festers, like a wound left to rot. Other times, the punishment is swift and brutal, rope burns, bruises, or worse. But there's one unbreakable rule: survive. It doesn't matter how you do it, or what you sacrifice. If you last through the day, you're one step closer to becoming part of the crew. If you don't, well, the sea has a way of swallowing those who don't fit in. So learn the rules. Follow them when you can. Break them only when you must. And always, always watch your back. Because on a pirate ship, trust is the rarest treasure of all. You quickly learn the sea doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't pause to let you catch your breath or enjoy a moment of peace. The ocean is a living, breathing force, forever shifting, forever restless. Some days, it's almost gentle. A faint breeze, the soft rocking of the ship. The sun warming your skin, the sound of waves lapping quietly against the hull. You might think, just for a second, that this life isn't so bad. That maybe you'll survive this after all. But then the sea shows its teeth. Storms roll in without warning. One minute the sky is calm, the next it's a tangle of black clouds and crashing thunder. The wind screams like a banshee, tearing at sails and howling through rigging. The ship groans beneath your feet, tossed like a toy in a tub. You grab for the ropes, your hands slick and trembling. The rain slashes your face, cold and merciless. Salt water mixes with sweat and fear, blurring your vision. You're soaked through, chilled to the bone, every muscle burning from fighting the wind. Below deck, the crew shouts orders that barely cut through the roar of the storm. You try to make yourself heard, but your voice is swallowed by the chaos. The smell of wet wood, salt, and fear hangs heavy in the air. You hold on, because letting go means falling into the angry sea below. And the sea, in its fury, has no mercy for those who lose their grip. The waves rise like mountains, towering over the ship. Water crashes over the rails, flooding the deck and washing away anything not nailed down. You fight to keep your footing, to keep the ship afloat, but the ocean doesn't care about your struggle. Sleep is a memory during storms. You curl up in the wet darkness below, listening to the creaking wood, the crashing waves, and the occasional curse or scream from above. The ship feels alive, wild, unpredictable, a beast that could turn on you at any moment. When the storm passes, the sea is calm again. Too calm. The air is thick with silence, and the crew moves like ghosts, exhausted and shaken. You're soaked, bruised, but alive. For now. Even on the calmest days, the sea keeps you on edge. The smell of salt, the taste of brine on your lips, the endless horizon that promises nothing but uncertainty. You realize the sea is never really calm. Not for those who live on it. It's always waiting, always watching, ready to remind you who's in charge. And that's not you. You think you'll sleep. You think that after a day of swabbing decks, hauling ropes, and dodging insults, you'll finally find a moment to close your eyes and drift away. You're wrong. Sleep on a pirate ship is a scarce and precious thing. It's not a soft bed or quiet room. It's a patch of hard wood, a corner of the cramped lower deck, or sometimes just a sliver of floor between piles of rope and barrels. Your bed smells like sweat, salt, and last night's grog spilled somewhere nearby. You don't want to know what's soaking into your blanket, if you're lucky enough to have one. The crew sleeps in shifts, or tries to. The moment one group nods off, the next rouses, ready to take their place. There's no regular schedule. No predictable rest. The sea and the ship's demands don't wait for convenience. The noises never stop. The creaking of the hull as the ship rocks. The slap of waves against the sides. The groan of rigging pulled tight by wind. The low murmurs and occasional snoring from men who have given up trying to be quiet. Rats scuttling just out of sight. Somewhere nearby, a bucket tips over, spilling something wet and unpleasant. Your senses never fully relax. When you finally do drift off, it's often interrupted by a shout or a crash. A sudden order from the captain, or an argument that spills into blows. Sometimes it's the panic of spotting a sail on the horizon, friend or foe, you can't tell yet. The adrenaline snaps you awake before your body is ready. You learn to sleep with one eye open, one hand ready to grab a rope or a weapon. Your dreams are short, fragmented, mostly of falling or drowning. When you wake, you're still tired. You wonder how anyone survives like this for months. The cold bites deep at night. The salt air dries your skin and chaps your lips. Your clothes never fully dry. You feel it all, the damp, the chill, the grime, in every ache and sore muscle. Even the brief moments when the sea is calm and the crew is silent don't bring peace. Your mind races with worries. Will you live to see land again? Will you be good enough? Or will the sea take you like it's taken so many before? You start counting days, hours, even minutes, hoping for just a few moments of true rest. But the ship moves on. The crew moves on. The sea moves on. And sleep? Sleep stays just out of reach, like a fading star on a dark night. You carry exhaustion like a second skin, heavy and constant. It drags at your thoughts, dulls your senses, and makes every task harder. Yet you keep going. Because on a pirate ship, rest isn't given. It's stolen. And if you don't steal enough, you don't last. You think the hardest part of eating on a pirate ship was the breakfast? Think again. The food itself is a battle, a fight you don't stand much chance of winning. After a day filled with rough seas and harder work, your stomach grumbles in protest. You're hungry, desperate even. But the galley doesn't offer comfort, only more challenges. The provisions on board are limited. Salted meat, hardtack, dried peas, and whatever scraps can be scavenged or stolen. Fresh food? That's a luxury reserved for land and the rare lucky raid. You approach the food barrel with cautious hope. Sometimes the meat is tough enough to double as a weapon. Sometimes it's soft, but in the wrong way, covered in slimy patches, the kind that scream, "Don't eat me!" You take a bite, and your jaw screams. The salt burns your tongue, and the texture is like chewing on old rubber. Hardtack, that cursed brick of a biscuit, waits to test your teeth again. One wrong move, and it chips your molars or gets stuck in a gap you didn't know you had. You try to soften it by dipping it in broth, but the broth itself is suspicious, grayish, murky, smelling faintly of something that died too long ago. If you're lucky, there's some dried fruit. But even that is a gamble. Sometimes it's so hard it might as well be a rock. Other times, it's sticky with a strange, sweet film that you hope isn't mold. You learn fast. Food here isn't just sustenance. It's a test of endurance. A battle against taste and texture that you must win if you want to survive. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of fresh catch fish hauled in from the sea. But the salt air and the lack of refrigeration mean it's only fresh for a moment. Hours later, it's stiff and smells like the ocean floor. Eating it means risking sickness, but the hunger often wins out. The smells alone can make you queasy. The galley is a mix of rotting fish, brine, stale rum, and unwashed bodies. Your clothes soak it up, and your nostrils remember it long after the meal ends. You chew carefully, aware that a sharp bone might lodge in your throat. You swallow, wishing for clean water, which is always scarce. Rum is plentiful, but it's no substitute for a fresh drink. Sometimes the food fights back. You get sick, your stomach rebels against the constant salt and rot. Diarrhea is common, an unwelcome reminder that your body isn't used to this diet. And medical help? You might as well be alone on a desert island. You learn to eat quickly, because the crew doesn't wait. Leftovers disappear fast. Rats and bugs circle around your feet, ready to snatch anything you drop. Food is survival. But it's also a reminder, the sea gives you little, and takes plenty. You swallow hard, grit your teeth, and face the next meal. Because on a pirate ship, hunger is constant. And the food? It's the enemy you have to defeat every single day. If you think the worst part of life on a pirate ship is the work, or the hunger, wait until you meet the smell. It settles in around you, clings to your skin, your clothes, your hair, and most alarmingly, your very breath. The smell becomes less of an annoyance, and more of an identity. It marks you, stamps you as part of the crew whether you want it or not. The stench is a complicated thing. It's not just one odor, but a layered symphony of scents that hit you all at once and refuse to leave. First, there's the salt and seaweed, the unmistakable scent of the ocean itself. On land, it's fresh and invigorating. Here, trapped beneath the rigging and mixed with everything else, it turns sour, a constant reminder of how close the vast, endless sea really is. Then there's the sweat. The kind that soaks your clothes and your skin after endless hours of hauling ropes, climbing masts, and scrubbing decks. This sweat isn't fresh or clean, it's mixed with salt, grime, and whatever bits of dirt and filth the day has thrown at you. It dries crusty and sharp, making you itch, but you can't stop it. You don't get to stop it. Next comes the scent of unwashed bodies, pressed close in cramped quarters where privacy is a myth and bathing is a rare luxury. Imagine dozens of men, all working hard, sweating harder, with no chance to wash off the grime of the day. Now imagine them all piled together below deck, sharing space with rats, roaches, and the occasional foul-smelling bucket. That's the smell of the crew, an almost tangible fog that lingers in the air, in your clothes, in your hair, and worst of all, in your nose. Add to that the sharp tang of salted meat and hardtack crumbs stuck in every crevice of your teeth. The sour breath that no amount of salty seawater can fix. The faint but ever-present whiff of spilled grog, stale beer, and unwashed barrels. The rankness of fish that's been sitting too long in the galley. The thick, choking scent of smoke from the cooking fire, mixed with the wet, moldy smell of the ship's timbers. Sometimes you catch the faintest hint of rot. Old wood, forgotten scraps, something dead buried under the floorboards or hidden behind the barrels. The smell clings to the air like a ghost that refuses to move on. It's everywhere. In your nose. In your clothes. In your hair. In the very air you breathe. You try to scrub it away when you get a chance. A quick wash in cold seawater that only pushes the smell deeper into your pores. A scrape of your clothes against the deck to shake off the worst. But it's no use. The smell is part of you now, as permanent as the salt in your skin and the calluses on your hands. You talk to the crew, and they don't notice it anymore. They live in it. They've accepted it like a dark badge of survival. But for you, new to the life, it's overwhelming, an assault on your senses that never really lets up. The smell is a reminder. It tells you that you're no longer clean, no longer civilized, no longer safe. It reminds you that the sea and the ship and the crew have claimed you in ways you never imagined. And the smell? It's here to stay. Life on a pirate ship isn't just hard, it's a constant edge, a razor's thin line between survival and disaster. Danger isn't an occasional visitor, it's a permanent resident, lurking behind every wave and shadow. From the moment you step aboard, you're surrounded by risks you didn't even know existed. The ship itself is a threat. Walking the narrow decks during a storm feels like trying to dance on a tightrope made of slick, rolling wood. One misstep and you're tumbling into the dark, cold sea, where the chances of rescue are slim and the sharks are always hungry. Then there's the ever-present risk of falling rigging or snapped ropes. A rope snapping under tension can whip through the air like a whip, striking anyone unlucky enough to be in its path. Men have lost teeth, fingers, and even eyes to the sudden snap of a rope or the crash of a wooden spar. The ship is a hazard course disguised as a vessel. And if the ship isn't trying to kill you, the crew might. Piracy breeds tension, suspicion, and conflict. Fights erupt over the smallest things, stolen grog, missed shifts, or even just a sharp word said at the wrong time. When tempers flare, knives come out fast. Trust is scarce, and grudges run deep. You'll also face the threat of battle. A pirate ship isn't a floating hotel, it's a war machine. Every raid, every encounter with Navy ships or rival pirates, could be your last. Cannonballs tear through the air, splinters fly, and the deck quickly becomes a chaotic battlefield. Smoke, screams, and the smell of gunpowder fill the air as men fall injured or worse. In the heat of combat, you learn quickly that bravery doesn't guarantee survival. The strongest, fastest, or smartest can be felled by a single unlucky blow. The sea swallows the careless and the unlucky alike. But danger isn't just physical. There's the silent threat of disease. Close quarters, poor sanitation, and spoiled food make infections a deadly gamble. Illness spreads like wildfire. Men waste away in cramped below-deck quarters, feverish and delirious, while the rest tried to keep the ship running and avoid catching what's killing their mates. The captain might act ruthless, but even he can't control the invisible enemies lurking in the shadows: dysentery, scurvy, typhus. diseases that claim more lives than any sword or cannon. And if none of that gets you, the sea itself will. Storms, hidden reefs, or even just the slow, relentless wear of salt and water can weaken the ship until it's nothing but a sinking coffin. You learn to watch every creak, every leak, every warning sign. Because if the ship goes down, so do you. Every day is a gamble. Every moment is a chance to be injured, betrayed, sickened, or drowned. Danger isn't just part of the job, it is the job. To last on a pirate ship, you have to learn to move like danger is a shadow that never leaves your side. You learn to read the weather, to listen for the creaks that mean trouble, to keep your knife close and your wits closer. But even then, luck plays a bigger role than skill or strength. Because on a pirate ship, danger isn't a threat looming somewhere in the future. It's the air you breathe, the ground you walk on, the reality you can't escape. You step aboard, thinking the captain is just another man in charge, but soon you learn, on a pirate ship, the captain's word isn't just advice, it's law. Or at least it should be. But mostly, is the key word here. The captain holds the reins of the ship, steering not just its course but the lives of everyone aboard. His decisions shape your days, your safety, and sometimes your very survival. Yet, unlike the strict naval hierarchy you might imagine, pirate captains govern by a strange mix of fear, respect, and negotiation. You quickly find out that being captain isn't about absolute power. The crew's vote matters more than you think. Pirate ships run a rough democracy. Captains are elected and can be deposed if they lose the crew's confidence. If the captain pushes too hard or acts selfishly, the crew won't hesitate to mutiny. So, the captain's authority walks a tightrope, balancing between command and popularity. Still, the captain's word carries weight. When he barks orders, whether to sail faster, prepare for battle, or split the loot, you follow. Disobedience isn't just frowned upon, it's dangerous. Pirates don't have time for dissent when the sea can swallow you whole in a heartbeat. But here's the catch: pirate captains are human. Flawed, sometimes brutal, often unpredictable. One day, the captain might inspire you, standing tall and fearless under a raging storm. The next, he's drunk, slurring commands that don't make sense. You learn to read the captain like the sea itself. Unsteady, sometimes treacherous. Discipline on board is flexible. If a sailor messes up, the captain might fine him, lash him, or even maroon him on a deserted island. Punishments are harsh but serve as a grim reminder that life here is fragile and obedience is survival. Yet, there's camaraderie too. Captains often share the loot fairly, by pirate standards, and there's an unspoken code. You're part of the crew, whether you like it or not, and the captain's role is to keep that fragile family together through storms, battles, and betrayals. It's a delicate dance of power and survival. The captain must be strong enough to command respect, but wise enough to listen. Too weak, and the crew turns on him. Too harsh, and mutiny brews below deck. You learn that the captain's word might be law, but it's not always just. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's a desperate gamble on a madman's whim. In the end, your fate often rides on the captain's decisions. But no matter who's at the helm, the sea remains the true ruler. If you somehow make it through the relentless grind, the constant danger, the unending smell, the brutal discipline, and the terrible food, know this: you won't be the same person who stepped aboard that ship. Pirate life changes you. It chips away at who you were and builds something new, tougher, rawer, and often darker. The salt seeps into your skin and bones. But it's the experience, the fear, the pain, the fleeting moments of triumph, that really leave their mark. You'll find yourself walking differently, moving more cautiously, eyes always scanning the horizon and the shadows. You'll learn to read the smallest signs, a shift in the wind, a creak in the rigging, the look in a crewmate's eye that means trouble. Your senses sharpen, but your heart hardens. Trust becomes a scarce commodity. After seeing greed, betrayal, and desperation firsthand, you'll hesitate before giving your loyalty to anyone. You'll start to understand that on a pirate ship, friendships are fragile, alliances temporary, and betrayal just a breath away. Your body will tell its own story. Scars from scrapes and fights, calloused hands from endless labor, a back bent from leaning into the relentless sea wind. The aches won't fade with rest, they become part of you. But it's not just the physical. The nightmares begin. The crashing waves, the roar of cannon fire, the faces of men you lost. Sleep doesn't come easy, and when it does, it's haunted by the past day's horrors and the next day's fears. You'll find yourself longing for land but dreading it too. The sea, with all its brutality, becomes a strange kind of home. You start to wonder if you could survive anywhere else. The world ashore looks soft, slow, and unreal. Yet despite everything, there's a strange pride. You survived. You endured. You fought the sea, the ship, the crew, and yourself, and you're still here. But make no mistake, the price is high. The pirate ship takes more than it gives, and those who stay long enough often lose something they can never get back: their innocence, their peace, their former life. When you finally step off the ship, if you're lucky enough to do so, you carry all of this with you. The smell, the scars, the memories, and the hardened heart. You are not the same person, and in many ways you never will be. So, why wouldn't you last a day on a pirate ship? Because it demands everything. Because it changes you utterly. Because it never lets you forget what it means to be alive, and what it means to fight just to stay that way.